Welcome to Draw My Life. I was born in Denver, Colorado on October 26, 1964. I was the youngest of three and the only girl. We were each 2 years apart. We lived in a nice family home in a middle-class neighborhood, and my bedroom was right here. My dad worked graveyards and slept during the day, and my mom worked 2 jobs for as far back as I can remember, so she wasn't home very much. I attended public school. When I was growing up, we did a lot of camping, fishing, four-wheel driving, and my family owns a cabin in Silver Plume, Colorado. My dad was trying to do an impersonation of Evel Knievel and drove his motorcycle off a cliff and broke his back. He spent several months in a body cast, and he was in a lot of pain. He had 7 surgeries after that. He began to take a lot of pain medication, and he became a very heavy drinker. He slipped and fell at his job and became disabled, and that gave him more time to drink and sleep. One of the most terrifying moments of my life is when my dad threatened to commit suicide with a loaded rifle to his head in our front yard. My mom, my brothers, and I were all in our kitchen, and my mom told us that no matter what happened, that we would be okay. Thank goodness my dad didn't do that, though he never got help either. We were left with babysitters a lot when we were growing up, and one of those babysitters was a friend's son of my mother, and he was quite a bit older than us. And he molested me starting around age 4. The worst part of that is my brother was involved in those assaults, and it scarred me. The girl next door's name was Sherry. She was about 10 years older than me, but one day she asked me if I wanted to be her flower girl. And I said yes, of course. Remember, they made me a beautiful dress, gave me a basket, and I dropped flower petals down the aisle. Across the street lived a family with 3 kids, and one of the girls was my age. We became best friends from the time we could walk and talk. We even joined Campfire Girls together. There was always something very evil and dark about my oldest brother. He beat us up, called us names, did really mean things to us. One day he was throwing rocks and hit me in the head and cut it open. He was very mean. One of the great things about where I lived was that I was only a block away from my maternal aunt and her 2 children. I could ride my bike or walk over to their house any time that I wanted. I spent a lot of time at their house. But the best part is that my aunt was a wonderful cook, and I loved pasta, so whenever she made rigatoni and meatballs, she would call me over and I would go to their house and eat dinner, and it was so good. My best friend and I had different circles of friends, and when I was 12 years old, I started to drink and smoke pot. At 15 years old, I had my first love and I got pregnant. I was 7 months pregnant before anybody found out, and my mom stood behind me, and I remember laying in her bed looking at baby name books, and it was a really bonding time. However, my father turned his back on me and was ashamed and embarrassed and wanted me to have an abortion. I developed toxemia, and my mom took me to the hospital, and I was in labor for 48 hours, and I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. My mom stayed with me the entire time. I delivered her when I was 16 years old. Me and my boyfriend wanted to get married, but our parents wouldn't give us permission. However, my mom did help us get our first apartment, although that didn't last very long, and he couldn't handle it and left us. So I got my GED, and I worked full-time at a bank as a teller. When my daughter was 2 years old, I met another man, and we got married. And what I didn't know is that I was pregnant. He became very abusive towards both me and my daughter, and the honeymoon was soon over. That's me with 2 black eyes. But I hung in there, and I gave birth to my son, and I was 18 years old. The abuse became worse after that towards my daughter, and one night he told me to leave without my children, and when I refused, he gave me a black eye, and he broke 2 of my ribs and literally kicked me out of the house. I crawled to my neighbors, and she called the police, but there wasn't anything that they could do. So my mom called my older brother, and he came over and physically persuaded my husband to leave without the children, and he did. So it was just me and my 2 kids, but I was pregnant again. I was very confused and scared, and my mom convinced me to have an abortion. That is my greatest regret of my life. I hated myself. I didn't understand how I could do that. A couple years later, I got a letter saying that my ex-husband was excused of all his financial obligations because he was in prison for meth. So he was out of our lives. So it was me, my daughter, and my son, and I worked full-time and met a guy, and you guessed it, I got pregnant. After I delivered my son, my husband became very abusive. He was into drugs and alcohol, and thank goodness I had my tubes tied after my 3rd child, and we eventually got divorced. My parents also got divorced at that point, and my dad relied more on his alcohol, his drugs, and quite frankly went crazy. My mom, however, felt free and started to party. Our family home was sold to my nice brother, his wife, and their 2 kids. They lived there for a few years, but then my brother got a job offer in California, and they moved away and sold our family home. After my divorce, I met another man. We fell in love, and he fell in love with my 3 kids, and we got married. During our marriage, I became a medical assistant and earned my associate's degree. I went to a National Certified Firefighting Academy. I became a CPR instructor, and I was involved in fire prevention. We were married for 18 years, but I found out that he was cheating on me. I tried to make it work, but he only cheated on me again. So I left him and we got divorced, and for the first time in my life, I was alone. I didn't have any kids. So I moved into a condo and worked full time, and I was happy. But there was still something missing in my life. I had my little dog Ruby, and I would take her for walks in the park by my house. And one day, while we were at the park, my neighbor drove by on his motorcycle, and he smiled and said hi to me. From that point, I found out that he only lived around the corner from me in the same building as me, and we started talking on the phone and seeing each other in person. But I got sick one night, and I asked him in the morning if he had any vitamin C, and he said yes, and he brought me some. And our friendship turned into love. And I finally found the one thing that I was missing in my life. And that is Jesus Christ. He changed me. He asked me if I would marry him, and I said yes. But then I got really sick. And I discovered what commitment was, what forever meant, and what trust was. I moved into his place since I was unable to work after I had a total hysterectomy. And we eventually got married and made his home into our home. Only a few months went by when my son told me that he went to Salt Lake City to pick up his daughters because their mother's boyfriend had abused them, and the state took them away. He lived with his grandparents for a couple of weeks, but his grandpa tried to kill his grandmother with her oxygen cord, so I wouldn't let the girls go back. We fought for them, and we got custody after about 12 months, and we moved into a house, and we bought a minivan, and we became a family. We had 2 cats, 3 cats, and a dog, but one of the cats died. We just recently moved into a new house, and it's bigger. We have more room. Our family is centered around Christ, and though sometimes we struggle, we always turn to God, and He provides for us, and we are very happy. The things that I've taken with me through my life so far is to never give up. Have faith in yourself and not in others. Trust in God. Forgive. Be grateful for everything that you've got. And love, no matter how much it hurts. Believe and pray. Thank you for watching. Bye.